Because of the different prices in Norway and in Ecuador, we have two very distinct production possibilities frontiers. If you'll remember, production possibilities frontiers are graphs that show you where, if we threw all of our energy in a country into one good, let's say, for example, agriculture, where would we be able to produce? And if we threw all of our energy into manufacturing, how much could we produce? So looking at these two frontiers between our two countries, Norway and Ecuador, we can see that in Ecuador, which is our example of a developing country, they could produce a lot of agriculture given the how labor intense their resources are, how labor abundant they are. And in manufacturing, as a result of their capital abundance, they can only do some. Now, they won't necessarily do all agriculture or all manufacturing. They're going to balance between the two. But they are limited to the following production possibilities frontier. In Norway, we are looking at a very different shape. In this shape, as a result of the fact that they are a capital abundant country, they could do a lot of manufacturing if they focused all of their energy on manufacturing, some agriculture if they focused all of their energy on agriculture, and then we are able to write out exactly the frontier on which they could produce. We know they'll produce somewhere on this line, some mix of agriculture and manufacturing. Now, with this production possibilities frontier, we have a price ratio. And this price ratio is the price of agricultural goods relative to manufacturing goods in Ecuador. This is at the tangency between their price ratio and their production possibilities frontier, where we exist in autarky, where without trade, Ecuador will produce, and therefore where Ecuador will consume. The same way in Norway, given their price ratio, we'll call it PA, PM, prime, they will produce and consume in autarky at A prime. So A is where they both produce and consume without trade. And if you'll notice, this PA, PM in Ecuador is going to be flatter than the PA, PM prime in Norway, which is what we would have expected given what we know about their relative factor abundance. Now, when they decide to trade, a new international price line is introduced, where Norway begins to specialize in manufacturing goods because they're more capital abundant. Ecuador specializes in agricultural goods because they're more labor abundant. And this international price line gives us the point at which we specialize. B is where these guys now produce. And it is at international prices PA, PM, or the price of agriculture relative to the price of manufacturing in the international market. This same slope running into Norway's production possibilities frontier, gives us a tangency here at B prime, where the international price ratio puts Norway heavier in manufacturing than they are before in autarky, before trade. The beauty of this specialization in the Heckscher-Ohlin model is that now what they can do is consume off of their original PPF. Their production possibilities frontier originally without trade was limiting them. But now that they have trade with the other country, they can leap up and off of their production possibilities frontier. In fact, they can now consume at point C in Ecuador, where they give up a certain amount of agricultural goods and they trade them for a certain amount of manufacturing goods. In the same way, Norway gives up this amount of manufacturing goods that they just traded to Ecuador and gets all of these agricultural goods in exchange. At C and C prime, both countries consume off of their PPF. This is the critical piece that we get with the Heckscher-Ohlin model. We now have an opportunity where, as a result of specialization in trade, both Ecuador and Norway are consuming up off their production possibilities frontier. They're getting more stuff than they were able to get before. Again, we start in autarky. At point A, there's no trade. We then begin trade. Prices shift to international prices, PA over PM bar, in both countries. That means they produce Ecuador at point B, Norway at point B prime. Once production is complete, these guys have specialized in their manufacturing, these guys have specialized in their agricultural goods. Then trade occurs. These guys trade their agricultural goods for their manufacturing. The Norwegians trade their manufacturing for the agricultural goods. That C and C prime is the beauty of the Heckscher-Ohlin model. Because countries have different factor endowments, trade can lead to getting them up and off their production possibilities frontier. Both these models agree trade is advantageous. Ricardo's model is simpler. The Heckscher-Ohlin model, a little bit more developed. But both say trade is always good.